How's it going, y'all? My name is Aiden Anderson, and this is a new series with the Moscow Minutes. I'm going out to meet with and talk to the candidates in the upcoming Moscow City Council election to better know them and to better understand their platform and how they hope to serve our community. This is Candidate Candids. In this interview, I meet with Moscow City Council candidate Nathan Tupper. Let's get into it. Nathan, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. It's kind of an interesting year for elections. This is the first year that we're doing this, but it's always exciting to see younger people running. And I don't think we've had more younger people running in an election that I can recall than in this one. How's that experience been for you?
Honestly, it's been a pretty refreshing experience. When I first started out the campaign, it felt a little intimidating to be so young and so inexperienced, to kind of push myself in and say, I don't care about anything that anyone is going to say. I'm doing this because I know it's the right thing to do, and I know I can do a lot for the city. Frankly, I've been getting a lot of support for that, a lot more than I thought, and which is so appreciated. You know, when people see me interacting on the street, they say, love that a young person's doing this. We're so excited to see what you got. So it's been pretty good so far.
That's really good to hear. You know, it's kind of interesting. A lot of people who end up running for city council are what you would call like longtime citizens of Moscow. They've been here, they know sort of how the community works, they've been around for a while. And you've not been around as much, and that's not to say anything of experience necessarily, but I'd be curious, you know, how do you go from having just moved into town to thinking, you know what, I want to run for city council?
Well, I'll tell you what, my degree is in political science. I've been working on my degree for a good while now. I just graduated with my political science bachelor's in the spring, and I'm finishing out my minor this semester. And I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from my degree, and I've had a great time here in Moscow. Every single interaction I have in the city has been fantastic. It's been great. I love the community we have here. I love the diversity. I love the ability for people to just get out there, talk to people, and have just generally friendly interactions with the other citizens around them. So when I thought about running for office, it was a matter of, I love this city. I love the community. I love the diversity. I love the people here. I would hate to see this community get more divided than it already is. So I want to be the person that helps bring people together. And I could do that best by running for city council.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Love to touch on that division, but before that, did you come from a town that was similar at all to Moscow? Or?
Kind of. It was definitely bigger. I'm from the Boise area originally, Meridian, if you want to be specific. Yeah, it's definitely bigger. I went to Ambrose, private school down there. I went there kindergarten through 12th grade, so full private school all the way through. I had a great time. There was some ups and downs, some issues with Ambrose, but it helped me get perspectives on things that I probably wouldn't have in my life. So I'd say, yeah, it's definitely interesting going from that background into Moscow. It's a bit of a different environment, but I'm loving every second of it, and it's pushing me and encouraging me, and I'm embracing every challenge that comes.
I think that's everyone when they start sort of a new stage of life, and especially, you know, you go from wherever your upbringing is to a town that has new rules, new ideas for school, new things, new opportunities for things you want to do with their life. What made you settle on political science? Was that something you always had an interest in?
I would say I started thinking about politics just as a general notion about 2019, 2018. I'd say those 2 years would be the biggest time when I started. At first in college, though, I didn't start out as a political science major. I actually started out in psychology. I tried to switch to biochemistry, didn't really work out though. And I had a lot of honest conversations with people I trust and care about. And they said, you know, Nathan, you love to talk about politics. You think about it a lot. So why not just get your degree in it? And I was honest with myself. Yeah, I do genuinely love to talk about and think about this stuff. So I should just pursue it. I should just pursue what I love.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because having had friends that, you know, love to talk about politics but never consider politics themselves, there's always this bend towards theory, mm-hmm. you know, rather than getting into the nitty-gritty of like the law or that sort of thing. Were you that kind of kid, or was it much more of a, you know what, I really want to get into like zoning and redistricting and all of that fun stuff?
I would say, I think when anybody starts out in politics, it's about the big stuff that people like to talk about, like the general economic system or this party and that party, what this person says. And then the more that they start to take it seriously, they see the nuances of issues. So it starts out the broad concepts and it narrows down to how things work. That, I'd say, is my story about it, is I started out talking about the big stuff. And as I got further professionalized and I further understood more, I started to care more about the nuances and how they built into the big stuff.
It's a difficult concept sometimes to think about the city in context when you haven't been here for a while. But clearly, like, you're campaigning on some pretty key issues that I think a lot of people would be interested in. I think that have been issues for a while in terms of running in the back of people's heads. What's been the response when people ask you specific questions about your campaign? And while I want to get into your campaign and some of the issues that you're covering, I'm more interested, what's the general response when you're out and about and they realize, oh, this guy's running for city council? What's that been like?
I'd say people like the platform, I'd say. People ask about what I mean by citizen-centered a lot. And all that's really talking about, I want to focus on the people themselves. I want to focus on the diverse array of people we have in Moscow and their perspectives. And I want to be the kind of representative that doesn't try to push my own ideas. It's not the point of a democracy. The point of me being in the city council is to speak on behalf of the people of Moscow and put that forward in policies. People ask about what that means a lot. And so that's what generally the response is like, oh, what do you mean by citizen-centered? People also ask about the housing stuff. Generally, housing development should be any citizen's or any city's goal. I want to push that as hard as possible because it's Moscow's future. Moscow's future is growth and development. And so facilitating that, I'd say, it's part of the job.
I think the citizen-centered is very interesting. I mean, speaking for myself and the platform created here, there's always an interest in stuff like transparency, like how do you get the word out about different things that are going on at the city level. What do you see as some practical steps that sort of encompass your vision of citizen-centered in terms of maybe not specific policies, but specific actions, more broadly speaking, that the city could take or that you see yourself taking while in office?
I would love to just go out into the city and talk to people. As a counselor, I would love to just go out in the evenings and the afternoons, talk to people as they are going about their day and say, hey, I am your representative on the city council. What do you want to see changed?
So almost like an open air office hours.
Yeah. And not just open air office hours. What's the word? Voluntarily going out. Because I think that's what people miss a lot is politicians going into the communities is what it is.
As opposed to being completely separate from the communities and just sort of making decisions as, for lack of a better word, a faceless bureaucrat or something.
Yeah.
It's tricky because you wouldn't think that there would be as much of that in a small town where if you walk down Main Street enough times, people just sort of recognize you.
Yeah.
But would you say that there's just a tendency towards that?
I think that's generally the way politics has been trending towards in the past few decades. I wouldn't blame it on any specific thing. I think that's just political people do not want to engage as much. And that's for a good amount of reasons, I'd say. There's, especially in Moscow, there is a hostile environment sometimes against people that have a lot of political beliefs.
And is that just like political in general, or just the nature of, eventually you're going to butt heads because you're in a small space and people have strong opinions?
Well, look, people are going to butt heads no matter what climate they're in. It's about how you react to people that have strong opinions that matters the most. If you decide to go protest on the street, that's your one choice. It's fine. It's First Amendment right. If you decide to get in people's faces when you protest, well, that's another statement of your character.
And based on that, it sort of tempers the sorts of interactions you can have, because even if, it's going to be a contentious conversation no matter what, but if it comes to a head and it just can't happen in a productive way, then something else is off and you have to rethink the whole thing to an extent.
I'd agree, and that's when the voting matters most. You vote for the people you want in. Democracy is built for that specific purpose.
Going back to the housing development stuff, I think that can oftentimes be thrown around as a buzzword, like Moscow needs housing development or Moscow needs affordable housing. There's a lot of different perspectives and a lot of moving parts, if you will, to that issue. On the one hand, there's a lot that a city can do to facilitate productive growth for itself.
Sure.
On the other hand, it's not necessary. You could argue that it's not necessarily the city's job to build the houses or to pay the people to build the houses.
Sure.
So going back to practical action, when it comes to facilitating that well, what are some examples that you see in your mind of steps that the city isn't currently taking that you think, you know what, I would like to try this approach?
Yeah, so I'll go back to my triangle for a second, starting broad and narrowing it down. The biggest thing is lowering the cost of lumber, and you can do that through a good few means. Inviting companies that can facilitate competition when it comes to building houses, or inviting new firms into the city that help facilitate lower cost of lumber. That's kind of practical in itself, and that requires a lot of coordination between, the city government going out to companies, but that is what government's for. It's meant to reach out to people that can help the citizens that you represent. I think that'd be something really important for the city to do. Mm-hmm. Something that I would love to do myself.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because you mentioned the price of lumber, and this touches on a very recent issue that has come to light with a lot of people, which is the whole Home Depot fiasco.
Sure.
Which I confess I have not been paying a ton of attention to, aside from the fact that it seems to be enough of a controversy to generate media attention. Is that the sort of thing where inviting companies like that or inviting partnerships like that, do you see that as a means to facilitate the sort of thing you're talking about, or is that something that's more unrelated?
I would say when it comes to housing development, it is something. I don't know the specifics on the contract either. I do know Home Depot does want to come in. I have seen some business practices in Home Depot that are kind of iffy in my opinions about labor stuff and business relations, but in general, I would like to bring in firms that encourage competition on that front.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, campaign platform aside, I want to touch on actually the campaigning process.
Sure.
Which is fascinating in a small town where, city level people generally don't pay as much attention to these sorts of elections. But this year, especially, as I've noticed, you're seeing more activity among the candidates than ever before. Like, I think this is the first year in my memory of where many of the candidates are actively using social media, in particular Facebook, Instagram, to get the word out. What's been your experience on that end in terms of both the effort you're putting in consciously to say, hey, these are the places that I'm putting my word out and this is how people are responding to it, as well as what has been your interaction with other candidates on that front?
Honestly, I haven't had a lot of interactions with the other candidates for the most part. But I think that's part of the natural process of the campaign. You're all vaguely competitors, even though you're running to be coworkers in the end. So there's this weird relationship between all the candidates. However, the social media side of stuff is really interesting. It's kind of new for me because all my social media has been private. It's been very my own stuff in my own world. And now I'm showing off. Like, I do go to the farmer's market, and I have a routine at the farmer's market. I go around the city very often. I help maintain a lot of the city as part of my job. It's just a part of my lifestyle. It's new. It's interesting. I've actually really enjoyed it, and it might be something I do more in the future. I don't want to be an influencer. I'm not like that at all. But it's something that I wouldn't mind being more public about.
As the campaign has gone, obviously there's a ton of different stuff that's going on in terms of events, forums, farmers markets, like you're saying. But at the end of the day, I imagine you do have to develop some sort of routine to facilitate what you're doing. And especially as a still current student, is that a good way to describe you? Okay. And are you like a full-time student, or is that more of, you're taking a break for campaigning and then going back and doing night classes? How does that work?
Oh, I'm just a part-time student right now. I kind of fit my schedule just right, just right, so that I can do campaign and work and still finish out my minor. I just have 2 classes left is all it is. So it's really convenient, really nice, just finishing it out.
And what are you minoring in? Just for the
Economics.
Economics.
Yeah.
Well, that ends up being thrilling and depressing at the same time.
As politics normally goes.
Fair enough. So, campaign-wise, what does your weekly rhythm look like?
I say a weekly rhythm. Well, I work in the mornings, go to school in the afternoon, dedicate the evenings to campaign, and I'd say Wednesdays and Thursdays I tend to keep for myself. Monday, Tuesdays I dedicate to campaign, Fridays to the campaign, Wednesday, Thursdays are for me. Just getting that balance of making sure you can still get things done, still staying sane, and still keeping your head on some good shoulders is very important.
I commend you for the sanity portion. That's something people don't really pick up on for this whole job.
We all try. We all try.
Are we successful? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Just briefly, because obviously you've got a ton going on between work, school, campaigning. Hopefully, if you win, actually serving the city in what capacity that allows you to. But at the end of the day, what do you see yourself? What do you see yourself doing for fun? What do you see yourself doing with friends? What's the downtime look like?
Downtime for Nathan Tupper is a mix of socializing with friends, hanging out with friends, and reading. I do a bit of reading. I'll admit I do game a little bit too. It's part of the young person life, I would say at this point. It's part of it. But I, of course, keep a good balance between keeping my brain sharp, keeping myself entertained, and obviously getting out there with people. Especially just this year, I would say I've been the most social, which has been so refreshing. It's been so good. And especially being in Moscow. Moscow's facilitated that so well.
Mm-hmm. So you would say you're more of a social guy than, a bookworm or an introvert or anything like that?
Yeah.
Well, seeing as how many hands you have to shake during the campaigning process, I imagine that helps a little bit.
It does help a lot, that's for sure.
I'm intrigued by this idea of having a gaming city councilor. I think, I don't know if you push that. You tell your campaign manager, like, hey, for relatability's sake, let's add some Among Us merch in here or something.
No. Oh, no, I don't.
Oh, so you have taste as well. Okay.
Yeah, I'd say I have taste. I don't mix the gaming in my campaign. No, I keep that to myself.
Fair enough. This is just free ideas out there.
Yeah, sure.
I think this is a little bit of an elephant in the room, and it's a little bit of a difficult topic to navigate. But I do think that you were touching on this earlier a little bit about developing a good approach to controversy when it arises. Like, opinions on said controversies aside, the fact of the matter is they arise all the time in politics, and it seems particularly in this town. And, without getting into specifics, of course, what has generally been your experience with navigating controversies when it comes to this town's politics so far? And what are practices that you put into place to make sure that you can continue doing so well, whether you enter into office or what have you?
I think I have a pretty good head on my shoulders when it comes to this stuff. I've grown a lot as an individual, and I've seen a lot of life and lifestyles, life experiences. Controversy, it's part of the game of politics, is what it is. However, the city does have a special brand, I would say, for divisiveness, and I think there's a specific community in this city that likes to be divisive. I don't know, maybe doesn't like to be divisive, but is divisive, and it breaks apart the culture and community that Moscow likes to build. I don't like that. I don't like divisive people. I don't like when people try to break apart the goodness that people build. So as someone with a good head on my shoulders, I would facilitate the aspect of community and togetherness that Moscow has afforded in me with my people and my friends, and I would like to give that back to Moscow. So when it comes to controversy, I would directly avoid divisiveness and encourage community and togetherness.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting thing because sometimes the divisiveness in question can seem inevitable, but it doesn't seem like, I would also argue that it doesn't have to be. In situations you've run into, what do you find as good methods in conversation for getting people on the right track and away from the sorts of divisiveness that you see springing up in this city?
I guess some specific this is rhetoric tip, I guess. Can always do the good old method of just not talking about the divisive stuff. Or you can take the direct approach and just say, no, I don't like these people. I don't like what you have to say. And I don't agree with it. Because XYZ reasons.
And I do think that there's a degree of honesty and authenticity that oftentimes gets avoided in politics for the sake of the niceties of conversation.
Sure.
Sometimes that's incredibly helpful, and sometimes it's very not helpful. So it's actually good to hear you say that in terms of like, hey, there are a number of different approaches. It's going to take specific moments, specific instances, obviously, to know which ones to take. But for somebody to be comfortable taking all of them, that's super encouraging.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I would like to give you an opportunity to shout out your campaign in your own words. That would be great. But just to hear your campaign in your own words and to show the world that Nathan Tupper is running for Moscow City Council.
Sure. Thank you, Aiden.
Yeah.
You can find my campaign on most Facebook and Instagram are the biggest ones. Just both are labeled Tupper for Office. My last name is Tupper. A bit about my campaign. I vie to be a moderate Republican. I do not try to be the kind of person that insists on my own beliefs. I want to be a representative of the people. And that does involve a lot of mixing around a controversy, and I especially do not like Christchurch. I don't. I want to be a moderate Republican, and I want to be the kind of conservative that represents all of the conservatives and not just one sector. Thank you.
Well, we're starting to lose light, so I think with it being 4:30 and that sort of thing, I think we should be good.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking.
Absolutely. And that concludes my conversation with Moscow City Council hopeful Nathan Tupper. With this video, you'll find links to his campaign and more for if you want to find out more about his platform or if you want to get involved with his campaign yourself. We hope to have more conversations with candidates coming your way very soon, and as always, if you have any questions, let us know. This is Aiden Anderson with Candidate Candids. Until next time.